Watch the breakdown. We're doing a special edition here on CLNS Media because I caught so much scrutiny last night after Celtics postgame show for replacing that loss on Robert Williams, which I understand from your guys' perspective, John, Jimmy, Josue, why you wouldn't place this all on Rob, and that's certainly fair. But when you foul out in the earliest minutes of this game, as Rob did, he wasn't available for the entire second quarter, much of the third quarter, when the Celtics were trying to stay competitive within 13. That throws the rotations out of flux, the whole game plan, and the personnel that Brad Stevens saw he was going to be using to slow Joel Embiid. And there are three big reasons here that this one frustrated me. First, we didn't even get to see Robert Williams match up against Joel Embiid. He just took himself out of the game too early. You can't even grade the 35 points that Embiid scored because it was mostly against Mo Wagner, Luke Cornett, and others who ended up playing in Rob's place. Number two, the personnel behind Rob is not good enough to match up against Embiid or even play the kind of team defense that the Celtics need to try to slow down Embiid and others. And they still only ended up allowing 106 points, and that was my third point. The Celtics could have won this game if Rob was in there, and the Celtics have been a better offense this year with Rob on the court. They would have been in a much more beneficial position offensively to succeed, get ball movement going through the middle, do the different kinds of things that they've done since last weekend to try to stay in this game. So let's get into the film. First, what's the word on Embiid? What do you want to do if you're trying to slow Joel Embiid? You want to keep him in the area. Obviously, he's going to devastate you at the rim. Three-pointers been there this year. He doesn't love shooting it, but when he does 100 times this year, he's hitting 4 out of 10 pretty much. So in between, he's hit a ton of deep twos, hasn't taken a lot, so players have not been able to get him to take those for the large part. And little hook shots, floaters, and the strict mid-range shot, 47% is an excellent figure there. George 50 for his career, and he's been dubbed the king of the mid-range in a career. So Embiid, it's tough, and he's going to draw a ton of fouls. His hook shot, obviously, when he gets to that 60%. Jump shot, no joke, 46%, ton of threes, but mid-rangers as well. So that's a pretty solid figure there. And brutally efficient on the layup, too, and that's why he's my MVP this year. He has an offensive profile, as we look here, that is unmatched. So let's get into the film. What frustrated me so much about this Rob game? It started with play number 1. We'll take a look here on what Rob was trying to do on this first play. Looks like Tatum wants him to come up here. You see Tatum give him that motion there. And I'm going to put my pen tool. We can draw a little bit here. You see Tatum throw the hand motion here. Like, come on. Let's see. All right. Pen tool is not going to work. All right, we'll do it without. But you see here, Tatum calling him up. Screen comes too late. Tatum dumps it off, tries to beat Simmons because Simmons makes his move on the ball early there. And Rob just throws it away. And that's one of a bunch of turnovers that the Celtics ultimately ended up losing this game for themselves as well. So let's get into the first foul. Again, I talk about Rob not giving him a chance to actually match up here. Why? Because he's trying to go for a home run, and definitely a play that the Celtics were not aiming to defend Embiid with. You start this play with a Kemba double off of Seth Curry. Kemba's close enough to stay home, so executed off the first catch. Second catch, Rob takes himself out of position. Tatum has to stay in the dunker spot here, so he's not in a position to come help. Kemba has to stay attached to Curry, and this is what's so great about Philly this year, too. Look at all the spacing. That was non-existent last year for this team. You have 3 excellent three-point shooters this season here, aside from Embiid on the weak side, as well as a dunking cutter in Simmons. So this is a perfect setup, but everything's going to break down if you're trying to go for a steal on this pass, and Rob really doesn't come all that close. About 3 inches there. Great pass from Curry. All of a sudden, everything breaks down. Tatum doesn't want to foul. So what are you going to do here? Just give up the basket. Instead, Rob makes a second mistake overcompensates and makes it work by fouling. On 10:24 in this game, Rob commits his first foul. Let's go on to number 2. Again, are these kind of plays going to help you? Number 1, I say no. Number 2, ultimately, I think Rob got screwed here. Reach right here, maybe? But I think, I don't think he's straight up here. He was reaching, Simmons elevated, and it's a foul. Rob doesn't get his hand on the ball. So yeah, you have a foul here. Reaching, a problem for Robert Williams. I understand it against Embiid. He's 7'1", high release point. Simmons is trying to overpower into the post here. And maybe get a dump off into Embiid here. Tatum's not in great position, but either way, stay straight up here. If Simmons makes it, he makes it. Again, you want to stay in the game, not try to make highlight plays against Embiid and Ben Simmons, physically imposing players. And that brings us to number 3. This is what took Robert Williams out of the Eastern Conference semifinals last year. If you're doing this, you can't play. You're going to get switched out on in today's league. As you see, Tatum's down here on Dwight. A switch happened at some point. Another switch happens here. So Rob gets taken off of Mike Scott. And know your personnel. Korkmaz is not going to take you off the dribble. The Celtics teach it. Go to the side. If you're going to jump and commit, get your hand to the ball and keep your body to the left side of the shooter on a right-handed shooter here. Instead, he goes straight into him, and it's an easy foul call. And with 3 quarters to play, Rob has 3 fouls, and he's out of the game effectively for this entire second quarter. Skip ahead to the second half. Foul number 4. Rob, initially on Simmons. Looks like Brad wanted to get him on Simmons in this half to avoid the prospect of more fouls against Embiid. And at this point, Embiid still has not inflicted a foul by battering or being too physical against Rob. It's just Rob's positioning mistakes. Right here, he goes at him. Rob reaching both hands in right away. Could have called a foul here. And instead, Embiid smartly sees the reach, goes up into his shot. Foul number 4. Again, if you're Rob, all you have to do is keep him in front of you. Nothing's gained by reaching. I understand partially why he does it. Get into that shot before he takes it. Because once it gets up there, Rob has had difficulty protecting it, and we'll look at that as well. But foul number 4, 9:21 into the third. Rob really has not been able to make any imprint on the game at this point because every time he's been subbed in, he's quickly out of the game. So third quarter, essentially a wash at that point. Fourth quarter, they start rotating him in against Dwight Howard. Let's see if this will work a little bit better. Rob's been stronger on the boards this year. Keep Dwight off the offensive glass, and ultimately the opposite happens here. Tobias getting into a post-up, kick out, Thibault 3, that's what you want, but if you look down here, wish I had the pen, Dwight gets that positioning. And we've talked about this on post-game. Does the box still matter in today's game? Here it does. Dwight is as good as it comes. This guy got drafted in 2004 when the box out mattered. And Rob hasn't had to do a lot of boxing out this year. So he gets boxed out position-wise here. Dwight's not a guy you can just leap over and use your verticality to oppose. Dwight's going to beat you on the ground at this point in his career. And he gets the offensive rebound, and it's the same story as earlier. Don't compound a mistake by fouling. This is not a contest by Rob that's going to help the Celtics here. And I know if you're Grant Williams, probably you want to send Dwight to the line in this spot, but if you're Rob with 4 fouls, yeah, and you're taking yourself out of the game at this point. And what happens about a minute later in game time? Harris lining him up. Rob's guarding that dunker spot, comes in, rotates a little too late. Harris is already in that restricted zone when Rob meets him. And just about any defensive contact there, if you're rotating over late, is going to be a foul. And so with 9:29 to go, Celtics are only down 15. Rob's out of the game for the rest of the night. And how much of that was on Embiid? Really, none of it at all. So that's the frustrating part of this one. So let's jump into a wider view of how Rob could have helped the Celtics ultimately in this one. Against Embiid here, what should have been the game plan? This play here, after the first foul. Again, I like Rob on the post-up. Embiid's going to try to go into the face-up game here, give himself a better advantage by throwing jab steps, hesitations, and fakes at Rob, try to get him off the ground. And you see here, he doesn't, ends up settling for a jumper, and if you can hit that with a hand in your face, enjoy your night, Embiid. 76ers are going to win if you hit all of those. Give them the chance to. Perfect play from Rob here, even though you give up the basket. That would have been great on play number 1. And what do you lose with Rob off the floor? This kind of action here. I said on postgame last night, I saw stuff in the first quarter from the Celtics that befit the offense that they were playing in the Charlotte game as well as the Houston game. Look at this. Nice triangle action here. Fake handoff. Embiid's obviously going to drop here, so you want to take advantage of this drop coverage all day long, and the Celtics have the personnel to do it. And it ends up becoming a foul. 3-point foul here early in the game off a Rob handoff. Embiid, you want to isolate him on defense. This is what won the Celtics the Eastern Conference quarterfinals last year. Embiid standing right here, taking himself out of defensive plays, and Rob's high screen action has the ability to do that. But for large stretches of this game outside of the first quarter, Rob wasn't available to do that. And as a roller, Embiid's going to try to stay here and prevent the roll, prevent penetration off of this, really keep the Celtics in a jump shooting position. Let's see here again. This time Rob's going to take Embiid inside. What ultimately happens? You get a first fake. That gives him a little space. Second try. I like this contest. High hook shot, but Rob almost gets there. Ultimately, I like the compete level there. No foul, just give up the basket. Those are the kind of plays that could have kept Rob in the game. Instead, Kornet comes in. Celtics have to adjust their whole game plan really at this point. It's going to be a lot more high passing out of the screens. You still get your looks for shooters here, and Kornet played a good game. And this is good screen action here. Completely takes, I believe this is Thibault out of the play. And Kemba gets his wide open 3 that he beat Philadelphia with last year. Do have to look at Brad Stevens too, though. Where is this for Rob? I mean, even if Rob's more physically built to stand with Embiid here, you need this on the catch. You don't want to give Embiid any room to operate, and it helps to have a less reliable player here on the wing. Like Steph Curry was standing in that position earlier with Milton in there, but this is ultimately what you want to give up in this spot. Like, everybody rotates, everybody finds their man, and Shake Milton just makes a great play. And ultimately, the Celtics might have lost off Philly just having a ridiculous shooting night in that second quarter. Danny Green going off, and you throw your hands up, maybe lose by a possession or two or a few, and say Philly's one of the best teams in the league, but you feel good about how you competed in this one. Instead, the Celtics never really had a chance. Once Rob's out, the rim protection goes away. So once Smart's beat here, Grant not in a position to help. Rob probably in a better spot if he's on the court. Now this play here, Taco is going to get a shot. Good thing about Taco, Embiid ultimately didn't want to go inside and bang against him. So he's going to do some high screen action here, adjust how he's playing. Send the Celtics defense scrambling. Tatum's going to run out here. They're going to try to play the pick, and they do well here. But Kemba, a little bit out of position, draws Brown in just enough. Thibault gets an open three, but he's the worst shooter on the floor. So you live with that. That is what you want to give up against Philadelphia. So there were some things that the Celtics ultimately did once Rob got off the floor that would have helped to keep Rob in the game earlier. Kind of action here. Rotations. Smart. Attacks off the catch. Rob's playing more of a drop position here. Everybody stays home on their shooters. Embiid takes a really tough shot and hits it. You live with that. No fouling on Embiid's jumpers. So it's perplexing to me that Embiid really didn't even take Rob out of this game. And you see another thing you're able to do with Rob here. Vertical gravity, paint touches, all the stuff we talk about, including a short-range pick-and-pop game. And what does this do here? Puts the Celtics within 14 then the third quarter. They were in a position to compete in this game, and for too often, Rob wasn't able to stay in the game. But credit to Embiid. Look at this. Who's stopping that? Are you kidding me? What? We know who taught Embiid that one. That's a Drew Hanlon move. And Luke Kornet plays perfect defense. I appreciate Luke Kornet's effort in this one. And ultimately, it wasn't enough. Celtics lose. Knows a game tonight, so we're going to let you go after 16 minutes here. But I hope I showed you how Rob just didn't show up for this game. And it was a big matchup that he ultimately could have impacted, I think. And he didn't allow himself to, just by being mentally out of this game from the start, it felt like. And you saw after the sixth foul, he walked over to that breathing room bench and was just like, I just didn't have it today. Brad Stevens said afterward that the one thing that Rob couldn't do was foul. That's what he was worried about in this matchup. And with Daniel Tice gone, Tristan Thompson not available until tonight, they were in no position to be able to take this game once Rob went out of it. So there's Rob's blunder. He's had a bunch of great games since he entered the starting lineup. He's increased their offensive movement, but defensively, position-wise, and fouling, 3 fouls a game this year. Those are things he needs to improve on if he's going to be a starter in this league and an impact player into the future for the Celtics. And that's what Brad's watching. That's what other GMs around the league are looking for from Rob as they continue to evaluate him as a prospect at this level. So, again, I want great things for Rob. I want to see him become an amazing player, but anointing him too soon isn't going to do that. And I think that's what Brad was trying to avoid earlier in the year when he was, leaning on Tice and other guys who are a little more reliable in that spot. And I know Tice fouled a ton in the quarterfinals last year, but he was able to stay in for stretches of those games. He caught them deep in the post, banging with Embiid. That's ultimately not how Rob fouled out of this game. So that's what I wanted to convey here. Let's watch the breakdown. Subscribe to CLNS Media, Celtics All Access, as well as my channel, Bobby Manning. And we'll see you after the game tonight for Celtics post-game against the Knicks. And on Locker Room, where we're going to chat after the game for Celtics post-game overtime, about an hour after the game ends. So I'm Bobby Manning. I will see you then.